Okay, thanks very much everybody for coming today. Really appreciate you all coming along, and it gives a chance, maybe not just to buy the book, but to hear a little bit from my mother, Áine, Clayton. If I'm in Fan at any time, people won't recognise me, but all I have to say is Áine McConaughey from Ballymichael, or the teacher's daughter, and people know who I am. So anyway, look, thank you very much for coming. We've the privilege today of having somebody who can talk to maybe the process of writing a genealogical book or a family history book. I'd like to just introduce to you Joe Kelly, who's going to say a few things about this book, which I know he's had a chance maybe to look at in advance. Joe's, for everybody who is in the family, most of us here, Joe's a grandson of Johnny and Annie McConaughey from Kinaloch. And certainly in the book somewhere, as you'll probably all be, I notice you're all looking for your pictures or looking for where you are there. I think there's more than 1,000 people listed in the back of the book, so that's the overall history that's been gathered over 20 years. Joe is going to come up now and speak just for a moment. Joe's obviously well known in Donegal as a guest speaker and historian on the History Slot and Highland Radio. He's also a secondary teacher in Donegal. Notes on my thing here, he's one of our own at the moment. So, Joe Kelly.
I'd be more comfortable standing down, but I understand why it is an Australian, maybe for others. False chat, and hopefully you'll enjoy your watching us, as it on Zoom or Facebook or whatever, and hopefully you'll be able to hear us. I was asked to say a few words. I don't want to say too much, but it's a lovely occasion today. When I came here, I came over two iconic bridges, Lacca Bridge and then the Harry Blaney Bridge, and it got me thinking of coming here, and the idea that bridging centuries, that there's a legacy in the book. There's a story in the book, and it bridges right back through all of us, bridge after bridge after bridge, right back to Coatbridge. So I just thought that was very interesting, that whole imagery. And travelling into Fanavolty, and I've done that in my youth, and I've been privileged the entire world. I've always said this, that I'm proud of the Fanavolty half that's in me, and probably maybe the best half. I was told Mission Shaw. I was reared here during the summers. I know this place, and many of the people that I knew, unfortunately, many of them are dead. Same as Fadi and Francie and Nellie Beck. And I was listening to Highland come down as well, and they're on about the President coming tomorrow to Milford to commemorate the famine. And that made me think of Nellie Beck. Her parents lived through the famine. That's how close it is. And again, the story of this book, bridging all that our ancestors here in Fanavolty, when the population was a lot bigger, the population of Fanavolty was about 7,000 at one time. Believed to be about 10,000. The records, how reliable they are, we're not sure, but reckoned to be about 10,000 people living in Fanavolty at one time. And that means that a lot of them emigrated. And yet, our family story, with the McCulloughs and McConaughey's, they returned to Kinaloch. So again, there have been Irish, there have been a lot of Irish down there. I remember the Irish myself in Kinaloch. And one of the things that people will always ask you, Killishu in Irish. English is a very poor language, honestly. In Irish, when you ask somebody, who are you? You don't actually ask them who they are, you ask, who do you belong to? Who. Each one of us belong to someone. That's the Irish mindset, Killishu. And Killishmudge, McConaughey's, Shinmudge, and everyone sitting here today or standing here today has the DNA. We have all the same DNA in us. And that's been passed down through the centuries. And then that brings me to Mum's phrase, and sure, I want to leave here safely. Drasad na asad na dinne the clan of Conagly. A briar or a weasel or one of the McConaughey clan. I mean, that was the way they used to be described anyway, so I don't know if that's still true, the remnant that's here. But certainly I can't be said in my case, I wouldn't be like that, would I, anyway, but Kilishu, who do you belong to? And it's terribly, terribly important. And it's lovely to see young children here. It's beautiful to see that. Kilishu, because we're living in a world where they're busy cutting the roots. They're cutting our roots. They want to get rid of history in the curriculum in the national schools only for Joe McHugh, the local TD, who was a minister, said no. They're trying to get rid of anything that has roots so that we become unstable in our communities. And when you become unstable, then you're easy to control. And all I ask you is to be very, very, very aware of your roots, your Fanad roots, or wherever it is you're from. Most of you are Fanad people. I'm very conscious of what it is to have Fanad roots. I love this place. I love the people. And I love the environment. Coming in and the hawthorns and the colours of them. Wow. There's a lot of green down here that we don't have. You have lovely green fields. We have a lot of bog. And just coming into it, and the way time happens in Fanad. Fanad, there's a different time zone in Fanad. Anybody that ever comes into Fanad, there's a different time zone. Don't ever lose that stuff. That's the things, that's the beauty of Fanad, that's the beauty of tradition. And tradition comes from the Latin traditio, to hand on. What's been handed on? It's been handed on, like the bridges crossing over. Stuff has been handed on to every one of us that have gone from those before us. So just to be conscious of that. And then that brings me then to Áine. History dies if you don't have books. But there's nothing there to remember it. And what Áine has done is a service not just to us here today. Think of the ones that went before us, Nadine Jimmy Rowe. That she has logged their memories, logged their life, logged their dates, their families, their story as best she could. So she honours the past. And she also gifts us with that story. But as well, Áine, as a teacher, my Leaving Church students left 2 days ago from school. They had finished school, and we had a last end of year mass and things like that for them. It was very sad. It's very, very sad because you invest in these young boys and girls when they come in 12 and 13, and then by the time they're 18, 19, they leave, they're like beautiful flowers opened up. And one of the things in education I have up in my room, be willing to set seeds under trees that you will never sit. That's one of my jobs as a teacher, to try to grow these young trees. I never sit under them and shade under them in the sun. But what you've done in this book is you've gifted seeds that have yet to come into the world. A story and a legacy that you will never understand. And that's a wonderful thing to do. And very few families will have this book. As in, we're McConaughey's and McCullough's, we have this gift that this lady, Áine Feater, has dedicated 20 years of her life to doing that for us. And she deserves a big, wonderful round of applause. And Áine, I'm sure they're clapping in heaven as well. And no doubt about that. No doubt about that. And to also mention Peter as well, and David and Joe. I mean, it's a family effort, and for her to be freed up to do her research, they all had to roll in with helping with photography and design, and with the shoulder that would give her support throughout it all. So thank you to you as well. You deserve a round of applause. There's a lovely poem by Rupert Kipling. He was born in India, and he wrote a poem called If. It's a beautiful poem. You should maybe read it to your children sometime. But there's one lovely line at the end of the poem. If you can fill the minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, if you can fill the minute with 60 seconds distance worth run, In other words, what he's saying is that life is unforgiving and every minute goes. But if you fill every minute with 60 seconds worth of run, then you've done something good. And Áine, you've filled the last 20 years of run with something that you can be very, very proud of. And I'm very proud of you, and I'm sure all your extended family and everybody's very proud of you for that as well. And that's a challenge to us all. There's a challenge to us all. When you read this story, it's not just about dates, birth and death. It's also a story that's sad. In Irish, when you're speaking in Irish, again back to the language, when you're speaking in Irish and you say, did you hear? Right? Again, English doesn't do this. In Irish you don't say, did you hear? What you say, ar wahitu. Did you feel? When you're talking in Irish and you're listening, you're actually feeling what I'm saying. It's not a physical act of just a word in your ear and that's it. It's internalised, you feel it. And I want you to do that with the book. And when you read that book, you will feel things in it that are very, very sad. I mean, your own father, and I hope I'm not offending you or being anyway unkind to you, but your emotional loss, but you know, the whole story of your own losing your own father so young. And there's other stories of relations lost in America, the father losing his wife and then getting cancer, and the father then having to go and look after each other. There's a whole story of life, and we all have had hardships and losses in our lives. That's the story of life, and it's all in that book. So when you get to read it, feel the book as well. It's a very, very important thing, and be proud of it for that matter. One of the other things when I'm just talking about that is Philip, that was in World War I, Philip McCullough. And again, you know, our children now maybe begin to learn about it more than ever. About 80,000 Irishmen died in World War I. That's living in Ireland. Now Philip would have signed up in Scotland, but he'd been forgotten. And I remember Áine sent me the pictures of the gravestone that she'd found and all. And I'm going, wow, here is someone of my own blood that was out in this war, that isn't forgotten, that is now remembered, and that he was part of that whole sad saga. And I'm sure there's plenty other fan men as well. In fact, I reckon about 30% of the manhood of Ireland between 18 and 35 had fought in World War I from Ireland. It was quite a high number. So look, that I think that was very poignant, and I found that in the book as well. The other thing I thought was beautiful about the book, just to mention, is the cover of it. And maybe the kids know Iron Brew. The idea with the brew is the same thing. Coatbridge was the industrial capital of Scotland at the time, and you can see that from the top of the book, the industry. And yet, at the bottom then is Áine's own picture, the Atlantic Ocean. And it's quite unusual. It was during the famine that they came back, the famine years that they came back to Kinloch, that they came this way, because most other people went the other way. So again, the fact that we're all here is very unusual, maybe historically. Maybe had that not happened, none of us would be here today, and none of us would be gathering here today. So look, I just thought it was a wonderful book. I enjoyed reading it, Áine, and I understand the work that went into it, and I hope you do appreciate what you've contributed to not just this family, not just our antecedents, but also those that will yet to come. I think that's very important. And you probably never really understand all that, but thank you. Thank you for your time, your dedication, thank you for this wonderful opportunity of bringing us together. You know, I was chatting to Aidan, and the McConaughey part of me is, we were talking about Fanat, and Fanat, we're not sure, but we think Fanat's from an old Irish word, Fana. Fana means a slope. So Aidan says, yeah, are we lucky now? And I'm not going to frame you, but are we lucky we rolled away from the slope? But today we rode back into the slope, and we're very, very proud of being back in here. And just finally to say, You know, in Irish we say, they're seen the ferry, they're the way to truth. And they're not gone from us, they've gone before us. The majority of those that are dead in the book. And before I came in here, I went to the graveyard to say a few prayers to Daddy Law and Nanny Law, Áine and Johnny Timon. And there's something wonderful about today that we can connect back with that. They're here in spirit with us. They're sitting in every one of you. They're sitting in me. This is what makes us. This is who we are. These are the important things in life. These are the important moments in life. When we get to realise key issue who we are and who we belong to. And we belong to something I can honestly say is wonderful. The McConaughey family, I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of my roots, my heritage. I know who I am. And I have a great sense of place and of time and of people because of that. And people say sometimes, you know, your history and all the rest. I grew up through it. And I have fond memories of growing up in Canada and the people that were around there. And that spirit has never left, and it will not leave. And please God, you will continue to keep that spirit. Be very, very proud of Áine, of the book, and of your family. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And we may fall in and fall out and all that kind of stuff. That happens in every family. But there's something very decent and kind and good and helpful that was always in what I experienced of the McConaughey family here in Fanavolty. And please God, that will always continue. So look, I hope I've honoured you sufficiently in speaking. Thank you very, very much. I'll end with one line from T.S. Eliot wrote a lovely poem, The Little Giblings, but at the very end he wrote this lovely line. And when you've done all your searching, you'll arrive back at where you started and know it again for the first time. So today, Áine, you've taken us on a journey back to where we started, and we're going to know it again for the first time. Go on my head.
Right, I'm not going to dwell here, but I am going to get my mother settled. So, without further ado, Áine McConaughey, or Áine Clayton.
I think it would be better for me to sit here, if you don't mind.
It's taken a while to get here. We'll give her a minute more.
Joe, you touched many spots. Thank you so much for your kind words. You are all very welcome here, and yes, you will have to give me time to breathe. Yes, oh sorry, yes. Okay. I want to welcome each and every one of you here today. I don't know where to begin, but I would particularly wish to, first of all, welcome my niece Áine from all the way from Australia, my sister's daughter Áine. There's a very special person here as well, Margaret Quersky in front of me here. Margaret is the wife of the late John Quersky, my daddy's first cousin, and she is here. She, I believe, is the oldest person in the parish. Her birthday was Monday, and maybe she won't mind if I say that she was 97 years of age. There's a couple of strays from the other side of the family over here. Christine and Sonda, who have come from the west of Donegal, Carrick area, my mother's niece and her daughter. That's Sonda and Christine. Thank you. And as well as that, another man who came over the bridge from Creasla today via New South Wales. He's on holidays and he's very good friends with the Griffins in Australia. So you're very welcome here. Danny. I am overwhelmed with your presence here today. The Tamon cousins, the neighbours, the friends and others who perhaps read about the launch in John's paper, and it's positive proof that you Fanet people read the paper, because I see so many of you today. It's a momentous day, and it is a great joy for me to be here, completing the task of started 20 years ago, January 2003. I had one goal in mind: to learn more about my father, Peter Tamon of Kinnelaw, to collect memories from people that were still alive who knew him and remembered him, to collect these stories before it was too late. Daddy died at the age of 46 when Myra was 4 and I was 2. Now Myra has some little small memories of him. But I have none, and that is the reason that I am here today. There's a phrase: other people's memories become so very precious when you have none of your own. That's the sole reason I began this journey. And today, along with my sister and Myra, represented by Áine, we pay tribute to our father in publishing this book. The information, as you know, relates to the McConaughleys, the Clintons and the McCulloughs. And the McConaughleys and the Clintons are of the most interest here, I suppose. It is not possible to outline the story, and indeed it's not necessary. So I'll just share with you a few aspects of my findings. You will see some enlarged charts around here. That one's the McConaughey one and the Clinton one here. They relate to our ancestors. And there you can have a look and see your parents, or maybe it's your grandparents. And there are 6 charts altogether throughout the book. We discovered that the earlier generation that we thought were Scottish were in fact the previous generation. They were all born in Ireland and they went to Scotland during the famine years. So in fact all our ancestors are Irish. There is no link that I could make back to Ireland from the names of the people that were in the census records and that. But we know that they emigrated in the mid-1800s. To me as a child, Cope Bridge was a magical place. No such thing. I'll just read you a little extract. A forest of chimneys spewed soot and grit across Cope Bridge, which had become the most polluted town in the UK, if not the world. At times, it turned day into night, lit by blast furnaces. Dense clouds of smoke roll over Cope Bridge incessantly. A coat of black dust overlies everything, and in a few hours, the visitor finds his complexion considerably deteriorated by flakes of soot which fill the air and settle on his face. These are quotes from the time. Now that is a description of Cope Bridge. So you can imagine the place that Granda went to and himself and his wife then coming back to Fanavolty, and the contrast of that. Sorry. I was very disappointed with the little amount of information I found on the McConaughey's of Conlaw. I couldn't trace back very far. But Thomas, that wasn't married to Nancy Clayton, Thomas was born in the mid-1800s, but I have no information about siblings of his. So maybe somebody else might be able to take up that cause another time. Then about the McCulloughs, discovering that Granny had a brother James, whom we had never heard about, was unexpected, but it was tragic too, because he died at the age of 29, leaving a wife and 3 children under the age of 4. We knew that the Granny had a brother who went to Atlantic City, but we rediscovered them. And the New Jersey group set up a Facebook group in 2016, of about 42 of them on that Facebook group. So this is why we now have all the information about the Atlantic City family. When we growing up, we always knew in school, when we went to school, amongst the school children, that we had cousins, third cousins, the Larrys and the Johnny Moores and the Atties. We knew they were all third cousins, and we wouldn't have known how that happened. But this chart here will tell you how we are all related. And it means now that most of us of our age are grandparents now, so that our grandchildren are 5th cousins. But we actually know that. And that's because of the community that is Fanavolty, that is so stable in comparison to other communities around the world, where there's all this migration, movement, immigration, emigration, and people coming and going. There's a stability about Fanavolty, and we can trace 5 generations easily. Okay. Now, there were 4 factors that had helped me to keep going, because it was a long journey. I gave up there's some years I didn't do terribly much, and etc. But Hugo Friel from Arahira, he's here somewhere. Hugo Friel, when he was retired, he offered his services. He said, I can help with research. And he spent a couple of years researching Scotland's people and ancestry and rediscovering the McCulloughs of New Jersey. And that his research added a huge body of work to this book. And there would have been a serious gap, or maybe 2 serious gaps, except for Hugo. So I really acknowledge his help, and thank you, Hugo. Thank you. The number of family stories that came in was so encouraging. Oh my goodness, it was just lovely. And little gems, and you could picture what was happening in these descriptions. They were absolutely powerful. And there are so many in the book, but I'll just only take one little one, if you don't mind. I want to describe Granny Mary McConaughey. And my cousin Mary, I can see here somewhere, Mary McConaughey Kelly. There she is there. Mary Tamar. She describes, I was about 4 years of age. I can still see Granny, a tall and elegant lady dressed in a long black coat. Now picture this. A black blouse with a white mother of pearl brooch with mother written on it at her neck. She had an umbrella hanging on her arm. Her silvery hair up under a black hat. She wore high black boots, laced in front with eyelets. Uncle Peter, Daddy, arrived on the street with a horse and trap. There was a door at the back of the trap and a step or a plate to get up into the trap. Granny climbed in and sat down. Uncle Peter was standing with the reins in his hands. He said to me, "Come here, Mary, now you can drive." He stood me in front of him, between his feet. There I was, holding on to the reins too, and I thought I was the bee's knees, with the ringlets flying in the wind. I remember that so well, and I can still feel the wind going through my hair along over Trial. When we got to the chapel in Fanavolty, Granny alighted at the upper gate and took me by the hand. I was wearing a red coat and red bonnet with a bow at the neck. We walked the wee path and down the steps to the chapel. Granny was like something out of the previous century. Isn't that wonderful? These are the stories that kept me going. I mean, if you're getting ones like that, you'll just want to keep going. Wait a minute now, hold on. Yeah. The third thing that helped me was COVID, because everybody was isolated, including me. COVID became my friend. And for 3 years, I did nothing else. Housework, goodbye. Dinners, as few as possible, etc. I really didn't do anything else significant for 3 years. So I thought, I can finish that. And thank God I did. Lastly, my family, like Joe mentioned, is so important. David helped in very practical ways. He's down here. In very practical ways with technical IT support. He answered endless questions, that people our age ask. Reassured me when I was in a panic and I thought I'd lost something forever on the computer. And David continues today. Peter has dedicated himself to making my dream a reality in this book. For almost 2 years, we have worked very closely together on every aspect of publishing, including over 300 photographs throughout the book. And all this on Peter's publishing programme on his computer. And I am eternally grateful to you. Joe. Hiding? Yes. Well, where do I begin? Joe was my rock, and he was always confident that I could finish this, that I was able to complete it. He made lunches and dinners and served endless cups of tea, and he was the shoulder to cry on, I'll tell you, and when I got ruffled. And he has put up with so much. There's nobody that's happier that this book is finished than my husband. And finally, I want to share this with you. Oh, sorry. I thought I had it. Yes. The most delightful story about Daddy I got in 2003. I met Michael Joe Begley, God bless him, he was from over there. And early on, and I must have been telling him, and he started to tell me a story about him and Daddy. I just have to tell you this. Peter Timon, as he was known, I took this verbatim, I might have had a wee recorder or something. As he was known, was a good dealing man. In fact, he was a professional. Me and him got on great. We had great crack in those days. One day I landed in Mickey Logue's in Ballinacreek. You know where it is. I bought a year-old ewe from him at £7.05. Mickey left me in the yoke to the main road, but no further. I had a bike, and as you can imagine, it was awkward to manage both the bike and the yoke. Peter Timon saw me coming along the road from his field in Ballinacreek, and he came over to me. This was in the mid-1940s. "You got Logue's year-old there," he says. "I was looking to buy her as well," he continued. "I was giving him £7, but Mickey wouldn't sell for that." "What did you pay for her?" When I told him, he said, "I'll give you £7.05 for her, and you can keep the wool." I quizzed him. "What do you mean?" You can have the wool," said Peter mischievously, and he set about shearing the sheep right there and then.
Peter was a good man at the clipping and he did a great job. He rolled up the fleece, tied it on my bicycle, and away I went. Peter got one over on his neighbour, and I was happy too. Sheep were then about £6 each, and the wool was about 6 shillings a pound. She was a fine yoke. There was about 7 pounds of wool on her, which meant that in half an hour I was making a profit of over £2, which was a lot of money then. That's it.
Now, a bit like Joe says, this is a fact. A story is silent until it is shared. Now, think about that for a minute. A story is silent until it is shared. So, in compiling the family history, the stories help to preserve this precious legacy, and it facilitates memories to be passed down through the generations, and it gives context to the lives of our ancestors so that they may be better understood, and maybe we may be better understood ourselves. T.S. Eliot, which you quoted, also said, "Our dead are never dead to us until we have forgotten them." There's a rake of them over there, and they know all about today. I just know they do. And we remember them. As we gather here today, we remember and we honour them. We can now remember them because of your efforts, your stories, and your memories and photographs which you have sent to me and which are preserved in this book. I pay tribute to you today. Thank you. Cousins and people of Fanavolty, in Scotland and in England, in Pittsburgh, New Jersey, and other states in the United States, I acknowledge you today and I thank you. My sincere gratitude to you all. Thank you.